Welcome to Everyday Martial Artist, a weekly podcast where you'll join me, Brian Doucette, as I interview a different martial artist each episode and hear their story. Some guests you may have heard of, and some you probably haven't. Be sure to subscribe where all your favorite podcasts are available. Also visit our website at everydaymartialartist.com. If you're listening for a specific interview, I sure hope you'll stay and check out the other episodes. A very special thank you to Topher Williams for our custom theme music. And now, the newest episode of Everyday Martial Artist. Everyday Martial Artist is brought to you by KOOnline.com for all your martial arts needs. Sparring and safety gear, rank belts, uniforms, weapons, patches, and more. Wholesale supplies made by martial artists for martial artists. Visit us today at ko-online.com. Hello and welcome to Everyday Martial Artist. I'm your host, Brian Doucette, and as we do every Thursday, we're joined by a brand new guest talking about their life and their journey throughout the world of martial arts. My guest today is a founding partner of Moore Lee LLP, practices in all areas of litigation, focusing in construction, healthcare, general and professional liability, gaming, corporate and commercial law. He started martial arts in 1969 with Grandmaster Jhoon Rhee, becoming an instructor in the Jhoon Rhee system. He taught martial arts to pay his way through college at Virginia Tech. Started competing in the NASKA circuit in 1983 and within 3 years became world champ. He's taught seminars all over the country, appeared on numerous magazine covers, and promoted the World Series of Martial Arts. Please welcome my guest today, Mr. Charlie Lee. How are you doing today, sir?
Great. Thank you for having me.
What I want to do is I want to jump into it, go all the way back to the beginning. I want to know where that first spark, that first interest that started your journey in martial arts came from.
You're taking me back a lot of years. You can show my age here. My mother, let me go back even further. I was born in Seoul, South Korea, and we immigrated to the United States in 1967. Mm-hmm. And when we got here, my mother was best friends with Grandmaster Jhoon Rhee's late wife.
Oh, wow. And
Grandmaster Jhoon Rhee had come from South Korea to San Marcos, Texas, where he attended college, karate club in 1956 or thereabouts. So he's been, he was in the States for, and then he migrated into the Washington, D.C. area, which is where my family ended up.
Okay.
And as my mother and Grandmaster Jhoon Rhee's late wife, her name is Hansu Rhee, became best friends, they thought that Taekwondo was something good for me to get into. So I started taking Taekwondo in the Jhoon Rhee Institute studio in Washington, D.C. on 20th and L Street. And I started in 1969. So it wasn't really a spark. It was probably, I was probably a hyperactive kid that my mother thought, might calm me down if I got into Taekwondo.
Okay, nice. And what are some things you remember about Master Rhee as an instructor? What are some things that stood out when you were that young back then?
I don't think there is enough time for me to go through that, but Grandmaster Jhoon Rhee was a second father to me. He, passed a few years ago. Mm-hmm. You may have seen the video celebration of his life on the internet.
Yes,
it was just remarkable of all the dignitaries that were there, and I, was privileged to eulogize him during that celebration. But what I remember was that I was very, very young. My best buddy, a guy named Philip Chung, who was a nephew of Jhoon Rhee, who was my same age, that we would train together, and Jhoon Rhee's star student back then was Grandmaster Jeff Smith.
Yes. And
we would learn various forms and sparring and self-defense techniques, and Philip and I became famous for doing demonstrations where Philip was attacking me with a rubber knife and I was defending myself. And we would do demonstrations all across the Washington, D.C. area, and we would get $1 for every demonstration that we did. I mean, sometimes we did 5 demonstrations in one day on a Saturday.
Nice.
And we were very wealthy 6-year-old at the time, making $1 per demonstration. So that's what I remember most. But that's where I essentially grew up. And I was looking at some of the other guests that you had hosted. Mm-hmm. Many of whom were students of Grandmaster Jhoon Rhee. So
yes.
They were my instructors who I looked up to when I was very, very young, and whom I still look up to even today.
So fast forward a few years then, when you got to the age where, obviously when you started, it was your mom's decision. When you got to the age where you could decide for yourself, why did you want to keep going? What was it about martial arts specifically that made you want to stick with it?
Well, I knew from a very early age that I was very competitive.
Okay.
And that I liked to compete and I loved winning. And in taking Taekwondo, Grandmaster Jhoon Rhee used to put on the Jhoon Rhee Nationals,
Mm-hmm.
3 or 4 times a year, and we'd have intramural tournaments, and I was able to compete in those and win first place and win all these trophies. It made me feel good to win. I guess it makes anyone feel good to win.
True.
But I felt especially good, and it made me train much harder. And I got my black belt. When did I get my black belt? I want to say 1978 when I was 14.
Okay.
And I remember taking my black belt exam. And at that time, there were 2 levels of brown belt. You had a brown belt, but then you had an advanced brown belt before you can get to your black belt. And I was able to jump over my advanced brown belt and just go from brown belt to black belt, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And so, I started competing, and, I had a gift of doing very well in Taekwondo. I just kept with it, and I was very, very good in forms. I was very good in fighting. I fought professionally when I was 16 years old. I had my first fight. It was on ESPN, which was pretty neat. And I have videos of that. So, I had a few professional fights until I graduated college. High school, 1982. Mm-hmm. And then I went to college, and, I kept my martial arts training there, and I opened up a martial arts club, a Jhoon Rhee club, mm-hmm. at Virginia Tech, where I attended. And, at one point I had over 300 students. Wow. That I was teaching, and I was making money as a freshman and sophomore, 18, 19-year-old in college. And that's how I paid my way through college, was having my karate club. So in between studying and finals, I would travel to these national karate tournaments, and almost every weekend compete there, do seminars, at various tournaments and at various schools around the country and around the world. Jeff Smith coached a U.S. fighting team that I was on. And when we went to Europe, they really didn't have an understanding of what kata or forms were. And John Chung, who was another instructor of mine, and I were very, very good at it. So we would do demonstrations there, and, we're getting standing ovations. And so, it was a very, very interesting life that I had at a very young age, being able to compete on the national and international scene. Wow. And being able to travel and teach seminars to martial artists around the world.
I want to talk a little bit about the teaching. You mentioned, what belt level did you first get into teaching, and kind of what drew you to that? Obviously, you said you liked the competitive part of it. What was it about the teaching part that made that something you wanted to keep doing?
If I could do one thing in life as a profession, it would be teaching martial arts. And it's unfortunate that martial arts instructors don't make the amount of money that other professionals make. Because I think martial arts instructors are so valuable to our society, because they're not really teaching martial arts, but they're teaching character, teaching them discipline, teaching them right from wrong, teaching them to respect each other. And I always speak about this when I'm out doing seminars or I'm guest speaking at an event, that if this country was run by martial artists and everyone was a martial arts student, you wouldn't see the nonsense that we've seen over, the past decades in this country, because what we lack is discipline. What we once had many, many years ago when I was growing up in schools, where you respected your parents, you respected your school teachers, you respected police officers. And, we've really lost our way. But martial arts instructors are still maintaining that level of discipline and character in their teachings of young students. And that was really a passion of mine, to be able to teach children and adults as well, the discipline that I learned. And, it's something that you should always pass down, because it's a very, very good thing for, as I mentioned, character building and just, for our society in general. And many of these martial arts students grow up to be, leaders in their chosen profession. So I do miss teaching martial arts. It's just that my job that I've been at for almost 35 years as a lawyer keeps me pretty busy, and I'm not able to dedicate the time that I would want to in martial arts. So that's a regret of mine.
Okay.
But martial arts is what opened the door for me to, pursue a profession in law. And I carry a lot of the characteristics and values that I learned in martial arts to my practice in the law, and I try to master that profession as I mastered the martial arts profession.
Nice. And that was actually one of my upcoming questions, but talk a little bit about that. Some of the stuff you learned in martial arts that you think helped you in your, profession as a lawyer.
So, Grandmaster Jhoon Rhee always used to talk about what it takes to become a champion in the martial arts. And he said that if you applied those same principles in life in general, or in your job, or, in athletics and other athletics, that you can become a champion in that as well. For example, he says in order to be a champion in martial arts, you need power. Powerful martial artists do well to, be able to, compete in sparring and, and other forms of martial arts, forms and weapons practice. In my law practice, I equate power to knowledge. If I know more than the other side and, more prepared, I'm going to be more effective as a lawyer in representing my clients. Likewise, as a martial artist, to become a champion, you need speed. And he equates that in life to someone who should never procrastinate. That if you get things done now, you won't let things build up to where you're, rushing through things to get things done. So I rarely, procrastinate, and I try to get things done with speed. One of the most important virtues of a martial arts champion is to have good posture. Whenever someone is, doing forms, kicking, or even striking, you want to make sure that you have excellent posture and excellent technique. And likewise in the law, I try to equate posture and having beautiful technique and doing things the right way and not cutting corners, and making sure that I maintain a good reputation, and that I'm not doing things, without integrity, and everything is with integrity and following by the rules. So it's those types of virtues of a martial arts champion that you can equate to, not just in the practice of law, but in any profession or just life in general, that helps shape and mold your life.
Okay. I love that answer. That's so cool. One more thing on the teaching note. Think back to the very first time you taught, whether it was assisting a class on your own to the last time you taught. Over those years, what do you think changed most about your teaching style?
That's a really good question. And the reason it's a really good question is because no one has ever asked me that question in all of these years that I've
really
been speaking and doing interviews.
Okay.
And I have a good answer for it.
Okay.
My first memory of teaching was when I was 14, when I just got my black belt. And I'm 14 years old. I'm a, buck-toothed teenager with long hair, that only knew right from wrong from what he learned in martial arts class and from my parents. But, I didn't know the ways of the world by any stretch of the imagination, because I was so young. One might call me young, dumb, and stupid, at that time. But I had a black belt. And I realized that when I was teaching students who were not black belts, whether they were adults or not, they would bow in respect to me before and after each class. They would respond to me with a yes, sir, or a no, sir. And I remember processing that having a black belt, with that comes immediate respect, because the people who you are teaching recognize that you have been through the rigors of achieving the rank of black belt. And I carried that all the way through all the years of teaching martial arts, insofar as that respect must go both ways, that it must be mutual. So I do know, as I had my own martial arts school and taught at other schools doing seminars, that I would respect the students that I was teaching just as much as they would respect me. And when you have this mutual level of respect, the information and knowledge that is exchanged between teacher and student is just immeasurable. They're a sponge for information.
Mm-hmm.
Conversely, and regrettably, I see many black belts and instructors who take advantage of their position, very arrogant, cocky, demands respect rather than earning respect. And that's really a shame. And oftentimes the students that disrespectful martial arts instructor is teaching loses interest in martial arts. And that is the biggest shame of all, because martial arts is such a wonderful discipline because it's mind, body, and spirit. And for someone to be turned off of one of the joys of life that we have all around the world by a disrespectful martial arts instructor is just, something that I hate to see. And, unfortunately, I've seen it all too often.
Agreed. Yeah. So thinking back to your tournament competing days, I'm just curious, was it more nervous for you being on that like main stage on the Saturday night main event, or was it more nervous for you watching your own students compete?
The latter.
Okay.
I've had several students that, attained the status that I attained and beyond.
Mm-hmm.
And watching them compete and wanting them to win was much more nerve-wracking than me competing myself, because I knew what I could do. I was in total control of myself. I knew that I could kick, jump, and do it better than, most of the other competitors. But, when I had my student that I taught and made them train, I'm watching every single move, making sure they don't slip, and I don't have control. I guess someone might call me a control freak,
Okay.
for being that way. But it was much more nerve-wracking.
Okay.
Watching someone like Carmichael Simon,
Yes.
who's doing these unbelievable, twists and turns and kicking and acrobatics and martial arts, and he was the pioneer of doing that, and watching him perform was much more nerve-wracking than me going up there, doing a basic side kick, round kick, and punch.
Nice.
So that's an easy one to answer.
Now, I think I'm trying to remember. I'm almost positive I've seen you compete a few times, because I was never a competitor myself. I was never into competition, but I used to go and watch the Diamond Nationals every year because I had friends competing. Yeah. And I was probably there from 90 through 96. And then I think I was there again, like 98 through like 2000.
Yeah. So my competing year stopped in 89.
Oh, okay.
So you probably saw a few of my students because I did have like these camps for juniors where Carmichael attended,
Yep.
Mike Chat, John Valera, and all the juniors used to come to my summer camp.
Nice.
And we did a demonstration, performing my signature form, the Twilight Zone. And we did that at the Diamond Nationals. But I competed from 1980 to 1989. In fact, my last tournament was at the Diamond Nationals.
Oh, okay.
In 1989. So I retired at the old age of 25 years old.
I remember hearing Larry Carnahan say your name. So
yeah. Well, they used to announce all the diamond ring winners on stage at the finals, and I had won 3 during the 80s. So and I was there because after I retired, I guess they advertised me as the youngest commissioner of any sport, and I was the commissioner of NASKA.
Okay.
At that time, because I had just passed the bar exam and I was practicing law. So I did that, for many years, and I was a promoter of my own event,
Mm-hmm.
the World Series of Martial Arts, until 2007.
Okay.
So that's probably where you heard my name, because I was pretty active until then.
So how many of your own events did you do then that you promoted?
I promoted the Charlie Lee Nationals for all that time,
Mm-hmm.
but I was much to many people's surprise, I'm more shy than I am outgoing. And I did not, having my name in an event, the Charlie Nationals, I was uncomfortable with.
Okay.
But I had made such a name for myself in the martial arts circuit that having my name on a tournament drew more competitors. So, as I had, these annual tournaments, the Charlie Lee Nationals, in the early, to late 90s, I switched over to the World Series of Martial Arts just to kind of give it more of an event name,
Okay.
rather than an individual name. But I ran that event, until 2007, and all hell just kind of broke loose around that time because I had kids and I had a very active law practice, and I just did not have time to dedicate. And I had 2 kids, and I had a family, and I had a mortgage, and I was making more money practicing law. So I had to give up one or the other. And to this day, I regret giving up, my martial arts practice because, despite the fact that I'm making more money practicing law, I think my life would be much happier making less money and practicing martial arts.
That's too bad. Yeah, like you said, it's just the handful that are making good money. There's not that many that are making really good money. And some of the ones I see that are making really good money, they treat it like a business, and it's
right.
not a martial art, and I wouldn't want to train there. So, in my opinion,
That's right.
So do you think?
Completely agree with you.
Something you kind of said earlier about how important it is for people to learn martial arts. Do you think in our lifetime we'll ever see martial arts in the public school system nationally? I know like some states have it and some schools have it. Do you think we'll ever see it on a national level? Because I know Mr. Rhee had a lot of success when he taught to Congress and stuff. So you'd think that would have had a little further along, but
I hate to be a pessimist.
mm-hmm.
I don't see it. I'm going to turn 59 next month. I don't think that I will see it in my lifetime. And I don't think, at least at this point, there is the visionary like Grandmaster Jhoon Rhee to try to promote that. I mean, we, in the 2000s, we've really, really become a divisive country, with politics, race, socioeconomics, gender equality. I mean, there's just so many things that are, pulling, this country apart, which is, very, very unfortunate.
Right.
And, martial arts, you walk in any martial arts school and, generally you'll see a lot of discipline in the school. And that's what we lack. And before Grandmaster Rhee passed, I had conversations with him that, we've really lost our discipline. And, it started, and I don't advocate, obviously, physical, spanking of kids and stuff, which was very common, back when I was growing up. But when a parent spanks a child and that child can call the police and, his mom or dad is arrested, that's when I think we lost our way.
Yeah.
In our society, and the virtues of discipline and respect only exist in the martial arts schools. I mean, I say this as well, when I speak, is that, racism, though it's a top 3 topic in our country, it just doesn't exist in a vast majority of our martial arts schools and our industry. I mean, you go to tournaments, I mean, best friends. I mean, you just look on Facebook. Best friends, African American, Mexican, white, Asian. I mean, it's amazing the rainbow of colors that martial arts, brings out in people. They don't see color. What they see is the color of one's belt and the respect that comes with it. And so, I mean, I wish I could do it if I had the time to promote it, but I wish that we find another Bruce Lee or Grandmaster Jhoon Rhee, Chuck Norris, that's in their 30s and 40s that have, a long life to live, that can really promote, something like that. I mean, how great would it be to have martial arts in public schools? But, some politician will find it to be discriminatory in some way. So, unfortunately, I don't think it's going to exist, at least in the near future.
I think you're right, but dare to dream. That's what I say. So who knows?
Dare to dream. Correct.
So what advice would you give someone who's thinking of getting involved in martial arts for the first time? They know nothing about it, and they're just wondering what tips would you give them on maybe what to look for in a school and maybe some things to avoid? Well,
one, just do it. Okay. I mean, the Nike slogan, just do it. You make that decision first. It's not a, what I would call a 24/7 commitment. Once you learn the disciplines and virtues of martial arts, it becomes a 24/7 way of life. But the commitment is maybe twice a week going to classes. And then as you get better at it and more interested and want to see yourself, get to higher ranks, then you'll start attending more. And eventually, if you get absorbed in it, you'll train, nearly every day. So I know martial arts is something that intrigues everyone.
Yes.
Even those who don't know anything about it. It's intriguing because they've heard enough about it to show some sign of interest. Go with a friend. If you don't have any money, sign up at the local YMCA. Just get started in it. I know a lot of schools, have scholarships, for those families who can't afford to take karate. One of my things that I want to do, later, as I start to wind down in my legal practice is establish a foundation for scholarships. So, people who are not as fortunate can take martial arts lessons at, schools that I would deem, to be worthy of teaching this great discipline that has been my way of life. But, when you go into a school, you have to look out for that instructor that will provide the student the same level of respect that the instructor expects of the student, and not the instructor that I was talking about, who demands respect and who carries a lot of arrogance and, cockiness,
Right.
in their teachings. It doesn't matter what form of martial arts that you take, it's the instructor that matters. And not just the head instructor, but the assistant instructors who are often younger students, working part-time jobs there because they're a reflection of their master instructor. So take an introductory class, maybe ask if you can sign up for a month of classes and make sure that this instructor is right for you, because a martial arts instructor is, just as important as an academic professor. If you like them, you're going to learn more. Remember what I talked about, this mutual respect and how much the student absorbs information like a sponge when you respect your instructor. But those who attend high school or have gone to college who's taking a class from a horrible teacher or a teacher who doesn't care or a horrible professor at college, you don't absorb. You just don't care. But when you respect them, you just want to learn from them. So that's why it's very, very important that when you shop for a martial arts school, that you make sure that the instructor is top quality.
I like that. I know back in the my younger years, one time when I was struggling financially for a little while, and I told my instructor, said, I'm going to have to stop coming for a few months while I get this figured out. And he looked at me, he said, I'm teaching class whether you're here or not, so you better be here.
Yeah.
He basically said, I don't care if you're paying, you need to be in class. I'm like, okay. And I trained for like 7 months without paying and took out the garbage and, swept and stuff afterwards, even though he didn't ask me to. I just did it. That's why the financial thing, there's always a way to figure that out.
I mean, I'm so fortunate the way I grew up martial arts. I mean, I literally learned from the martial arts gods.
Yes.
Grandmaster Jhoon Rhee, Jeff Smith, John Jung, Pat Worley, John Worley, Larry Carnahan, all these fantastic, instructors, Michael Coles. I mean, these guys were, Otis Hooper, these guys were the best, in their profession, in their fields. And all the folks from Texas that, came under the Jhoon Rhee umbrella, with Alan Steen and Pat Burleson being, the first instructors and black belts of Grandmaster Jhoon Rhee, and all the people who came, under them, the Rudy Smedleys, the Ray McCallums, and it's just, Ishmael Robles. I mean, it's just incredible, the family tree of Jhoon Rhee students. I always say that, Grandmaster Rhee never wanted to just have his students to be participants, and he wanted them to be champions. I mean, like to be number one. And I always say the Jhoon Rhee family tree is a forest of world champions. And
nice.
And everywhere you go, around this country, who have learned from the Jhoon Rhee system, I mean, they are top-notch black belts.
So now, in all your years of martial arts, I'm just kind of curious, what are your thoughts on MMA and UFC? Is that something you're a fan of?
I am.
Okay.
So I live in 3 places right now. I live in Washington, D.C., where I grew up. I have a home in Florida, and I have a home in Las Vegas. And, growing up, I was, a huge boxing fan.
Okay.
Muhammad Ali is my idol.
Nice.
I have Muhammad Ali memorabilia everywhere, and I've had a chance to meet him, and I followed boxing, for many, many years until it, essentially, died out, and Floyd Mayweather and Manny Pacquiao were really the only, marquee names.
Right.
And when mixed martial arts first came out, I mean, I watched the first series of UFC events, UFC 1, 2, 3, and, watching Royce Gracie and Dan Severn and, Shamrock and all those, basically what I call martial artists in a different discipline fighting each other to determine which discipline was best.
Right.
And at that time, there were no rules. And, Grandmaster Rhee always used to say, martial arts without rules is street fighting. And that's what it was. It was basically street fighting.
That is true.
So I was not, really interested, other than, the UFC being a, sideshow at a circus, these fighters headbutting, pulling hair. And I think the only thing they couldn't do was bite.
It was no biting, no eye gouging, no fish hooking. Those are the original 3 rules.
So, when Dana White and the Fertitta brothers, bought the UFC, I think in the late 90s, the UFC was ready to go under, and I think they bought it. I know just from watching documentaries about the UFC and how they almost went bankrupt until they filmed The Ultimate Fighter on Spike Television, which brought them back from the dead, and now they're a $4 billion plus company. they hired, several people from the boxing field. I think the one guy's name is Mark Ratner, who was the commissioner of boxing, and he lobbied the Nevada State Athletic Commission and all various state athletic commissions to get sanctioning for their fights. And I know that was probably a very, very tough effort. I would have loved to have been on the ground floor and help these guys, but my life went a different way, into practice of law. But once they got things sanctioned and started having rules, you start to recognize that, mixed martial arts was not a discipline, like Taekwondo or Shotokan. It was not a separate discipline of martial arts, but it started to become a discipline where people started to learn jiu-jitsu and grappling and wrestling and striking, and made a well-rounded mixed martial arts fighter. And, mixed martial arts is actually, MMA is actually a form of the martial arts now. It's just a combination of all the, the great disciplines that we have. So when that started happening, I started to see the skills of various fighters as the evolution of these fighters turned from a single discipline to multidiscipline. And that's when I got really, really interested. And I started getting really, really interested in the, Chuck Liddell, Tito Ortiz, Randy, Couture days.
Nice.
And I pretty much went to every UFC event in Vegas. I still go to those events.
That's cool.
And, I really enjoy the skill set. Many people will find it brutal, which it is, but it's a sport, in my opinion, that is more exciting than any other sport. I don't like too much the, when they're on top of each other and not much is happening, the grappling. I understand, why they do that and the effectiveness, of that discipline. But the puzzle that these fighters have to figure out of the other fighter and what their skills are, to me, I find fascinating. I think that if, I know Joe Corley and his group are basically resurrecting the PK with, I think they call it kick, punch, repeat, just striking. That to me excites me more than anything, watching people kickboxing. I mean, because it's all striking. I mean, and the discipline that goes with that. I love that. But, the only place that I really get to see it on a wide scale basis is the UFC. So I will say, probably much to a lot of people's surprise that I am a huge fan of watching the UFC, but I'm as much of a fan of watching the critics of the UFC as well. And just seeing how the sport has evolved and how the business is run and how the fighters are all evolving and the teams that are forming and the rivalries and the pay-per-views and the marketing of the product that they're selling to the public. So,
nice.
So yeah. So
I love that.
So I do like it.
That's one of the best answers I've had to that question. I love that a lot. So Good job. All right. So who are like 2, 3, maybe 4 names, and they don't have to be people you've actually met, but just 2 or 3 or 4 names that you would put on your personal Mount Rushmore of martial arts?
Wow. Mount Rushmore of martial arts. Well, I mean, the 3 obvious are Grandmaster Jhoon Rhee, Bruce Lee, and Chuck Norris.
Yep. Nice.
And then if I had to select a 4th, it would be Grandmaster Jeff Smith.
Nice.
Jeff Smith has, been my mentor, my coach, my friend, and, he was as much of a hero to me as Muhammad Ali was when I was growing up, because that's who I followed, watching him fight. So, so those would be the 4 that I would put on my round one.
That's a really good Mount Rushmore. I like those. Okay. I'm actually trying to get Jeff on the show, so fingers crossed. He'd be fun. I think he'd be a lot of fun to talk to.
He'll just if you need any help, I'll twist his arm.
I appreciate it. Cool.
He will definitely come on the show.
So I know something that was really important to Grandmaster Rhee was philosophy. That was something he really instilled in his students. So what is maybe one philosophy that you learned through all your years of martial arts that really stands out, really comes to the top of the list?
Yeah, it's simple. I mean, his message, he wrote a book called Trutopia. And what he preached for many, many years, which I really didn't understand until later in life, was that the ultimate goal in anyone's life is to be happy. And he said, these 3 virtues, truth, beauty, and love, brings you happiness. And he says it's a simple formula. He said that if you live a life of deceit, people will not like you. And if you're deceitful, you will not be loved. And if you're not loved, you will not be happy. And conversely, his message was that if you live a life of integrity, of truth, that people will see the beauty in you. And if you're beautiful, you're loved. And if you're loved, you're happy. It was that simple of a message. that he preached for decades and decades. And I think when he passed, and if you saw the celebration of life, so many people were talking about truth, beauty, and love, including myself, that I think it just resonated with everyone upon his passing. So that's the message that I will carry with me for the rest of my life from him.
And I actually have that book. After I interviewed Mr. Pineda, he sent me 3 of Jhoon Rhee's books. So
Great.
I haven't had a time to read him yet, but that's my plan over the next few weeks. But he sent me the Trutopia, he sent me the A Tiger Roars, and then the Bruce Lee and I. So I have those 3 I'm going to be hopefully reading over the next 2 months. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, France is a great guy, wonderful human being, great instructor, so much humility in that individual, lives, breathes the Jhoon Rhee way. And he, really took care of Grandmaster Jhoon Rhee the latter parts of his life when he was sick. So I'm very, very grateful to Francis for doing that.
He was really, really, I can't wait. I'm hoping to meet him in person someday. My son actually lives in Arlington, so I'm planning to hopefully get out there in 2023 and stop into the school and meet him. So fingers crossed.
Fantastic.
All right. I have a few fun questions to wrap it up. I know you got to go soon, but I got a few fun ones here.
Okay.
How about a favorite martial arts book? And you might have just given me the answer, but.
Well, favorite martial arts book. Wow. One would think that as a lawyer, I read a lot of books, but I don't.
Okay.
But my favorite martial arts book, I can't think of one. Jhoon Rhee wrote a book called Bruce Lee and I, which I loved reading about, and the early years. So I would say it's that book, Bruce Lee and I,
nice,
by Grandmaster Jhoon Rhee.
You're the first one to pick that book, so that's good. I'm looking forward to reading it. Now, this one you might not have an answer for. I mean, you kind of grew up in the 70s and 80s, so do you have a favorite martial arts video game?
I don't play video games.
Okay.
So
not even back then. You never got into like Tekken or Street Fighter.
No, I never got into those games.
Okay.
The only game that I remember playing video that I was not very good at was like Miss Pac-Man and Dig Dug and Galaga. But I never got into martial arts video games.
Okay, that's actually funny. I actually played Dig Dug today. The place I work at full time has a video game in the break room, and it's got Miss Pac-Man, it's got Dig Dug, it's got like 15 games on there, and I played Dig Dug today, so that's cool.
I'm gonna have to ask you where to find those games. So nice. I might get it myself.
There you go. How about a favorite martial arts TV show?
Boy, you're really testing me. I used to love watching, because I grew up as well, in the martial arts circuit with Ernie Reyes Jr. So anything Ernie Reyes Jr. did, I will. But I don't know if this was not television, but movie wise, I mean, one of my favorite movies of all time is The Karate Kid, the original Karate Kid.
Yes.
Just because of all of the virtues and the vices of martial arts that are displayed, and good, beating evil at the end of the movie. Loved the movie. I still watch it. I love it. And I preach every parent to go rent that movie for that, for their child, or find it on Netflix or something like that. But it's just it's just an awesome movie. It's entertaining and has, great messages.
That's the same answer as me, because I've told the story to many of my guests. That's the reason I got involved in martial arts. I was 10 years old when that came out in 1984, and I walked out of the movie theater, and a local instructor was standing up front handing out free passes for a month of Tung Sudo. And that's what got me started. So I owe it. And I still watch it at least once a year. And you mentioned Ernie Reyes Jr. The show Sidekicks is one of my all-time favorite TV shows. I wish I
used to watch it every week.
Yeah, I wish it's owned by Disney. I wish they'd put it on Disney Plus. I'd love to rewatch it. I mean, it's on YouTube, but it's like grainy videos and stuff. And not cool. But and I have to ask, since you're a Karate Kid fan, have you gotten into Cobra Kai at all?
I've watched every show.
Yeah,
I've binge watched every show, every season, the night that it comes out. So
nice.
As I guess most people describe it as cheesy.
Yes.
But I loved it.
In a good way. Cheesy in a good way. It's the nostalgia is so cool.
In a good way. And it, relieves my mind from the stresses of work that I have every day in my law practice.
I know one of my guests said she was watching the last season, and when her husband walked in, the one episode where they're fighting in the school, and he's like, "What are you watching?" Right. And she said, "It's a security camera from our school." He's like, "What?" I'm like, that's a good answer.
Great answer.
Nice. All right.
great.
Final question, and this one doesn't have to be a martial arts movie because you already answered the movie question, but it just a favorite movie fight scene.
It would have to be Bruce Lee from Enter the Dragon.
Nice.
At the end, where I could remember every scene of that. I used to go to Chinese theater when I was younger, almost every weekend night. But it would be the final fight scene in Enter the Dragon.
That's awesome. Great answer. Yeah.
Well,
anything that we haven't touched on that you want? We still got a few minutes left. Anything you want to mention that I maybe forgot to ask about, or anything you want to get out there?
No, I mean, I know I've been, difficult to get a hold of and schedule, and I apologize for that. But I'm really glad I did, this interview. I'm very grateful because it back, down to martial arts, back to my martial art roots and I have a smile on my face right now. I haven't had a smile on my face, for 30 years practicing law. And
Nice.
And as I said, while practicing law may be more financially rewarding than being a martial arts instructor, I would trade in a heartbeat because martial arts has always been my passion, and I miss it. I really, really do.
A little off topic here, but do you remember a TV show in, I think it was the late 90s, early 2000s, called Ed, where the guy was a lawyer and moved back to his hometown and bought a bowling alley, so they called him the bowling alley lawyer. So I'm thinking maybe you open a martial arts school with a law practice in the back.
Yeah, maybe someday I'll do that, but I'll probably get sued and I'll have to defend myself.
There you go. There you go.
From either the front side or from the back side, from the law side or the karate side. Yeah, but so that's how much I really love the martial arts and all the people that I've met.
Nice.
Throughout my years.
Well, I hope you get to start teaching again someday. I really do. I heard so much good things about you from people who trained with you, and that's why I really wanted to get you on the show. And I'm so glad we were able to do this because I've enjoyed your stories.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me, and hopefully I look forward to meeting you in person.
Definitely. Thanks for listening to Everyday Martial Artist. We hope you will join us every week for a brand new episode with a different martial artist telling their story. If you enjoy the show, be sure to leave us a review. Also, be sure to check out our website at everydaymartialartist.com. There you can find all of our episodes and contact us to suggest guests and ask questions. Again, thanks for listening to Everyday Martial Artist, and we'll see you next week.